Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. Written by Hakim Abul Qasim Ferdowsi Tusi. Translated by Helen Ziman. Transcribed and narrated by Lore Enchanter. Chapter 2. Fereydoun. 500 years passed with Feridoun ruling the world. During his reign, power and virtue flourished in the land, and he consistently performed good deeds. He traveled across the kingdom, uncovering both the evident and concealed aspects of society, and rectified any wrongdoing he encountered. With his benevolence, he restrained the influence of evil. He transformed the world into a paradise, replacing wild herbs with the beauty of cypress trees and roses. After many years had passed, 3 sons were born to him. Their mother belonged to the house of Jamshid. These sons were handsome, tall, and strong, but their names were unknown to the world because Feridoun had not tested their hearts. However, when he saw that they had reached the age of strength, he called them to his throne and instructed them to find the King of Yemen, who had 3 daughters as beautiful as the moon. He wanted his sons to woo them and make them their own. Following their father's command, Feridoun's sons embarked on a journey to Yemen, accompanied by an innumerable host resembling the stars. And when they arrived in Yemen, the king came forward to welcome them, and his entourage resembled the colorful feathers of a pheasant. Then the sons of Feridoun married the daughters of Serv, the king of Yemen, and returned with them to their homeland. Serv bestowed upon his new sons a great amount of treasure carried on the backs of camels, and he also gave them umbrellas as a symbol of their kingship. Now it happened that when Feridoun learned that his sons were returning, he went to meet them and test their courage. So he transformed into a furious dragon, with flames shooting from his mouth and foam at his jaws. As his sons approached the mountain pass, he suddenly appeared like a whirlwind, creating a cloud of dust with his movements and filling the air with his roaring. He attacked the eldest son, who dropped his spear and said, "A wise and prudent man does not fight dragons." He turned and fled from the monster, leaving his brothers to face him. The dragon then attacked the second son, who said, "Whether it is a furious lion or a valiant knight, it doesn't matter if I have to fight." He took out his bow and prepared to defend himself. But the youngest son approached and, upon seeing the dragon, said, "You reptile, flee from our presence and do not challenge lions. If you have heard the name Feridoun, beware of what you do, for we are his sons, armed with spears and ready to fight. I advise you to abandon your evil path, or else I will bring upon you the crown of enmity." After testing their hearts in this way, the glorious Feridoun disappeared from their sight. But he soon returned, appearing as their father, accompanied by many warriors, elephants, and cymbals. Feridoun held a cow-headed mace in his hand, and the kawani, the apron of Kove, the royal standard, was waved above his head. When the sons saw their father, they dismounted from their horses and ran to greet him, kissing the ground before his feet. The cymbals clashed, the trumpets sounded, and sounds of rejoicing filled the air. Feridoun raised his sons, kissed their foreheads, and honored them accordingly. When they arrived at the royal house, he prayed to God to bless his offspring. Gathering them around him, he seated them on magnificent thrones. Then he spoke to them, saying,
"O my sons, listen to my words. The raging dragon, whose breath was dangerous, was none other than your father, who sought to test your hearts. Having learned of your courage, he rejoiced. Now I will give you names befitting men. The firstborn shall be called Silim. May your desires be fulfilled in the world, for you sought to save yourself from the dragon's clutches and did not hesitate to flee. A man who does not flee from an elephant or a lion is considered foolhardy rather than brave. The second son, who showed courage from the beginning, as fierce as a flame, shall be called Tur, the courageous, who cannot be intimidated even by a mad elephant. But the youngest is a wise and brave man, who knows when to act and when to wait. He chose a middle path between the flame and the ground, as befits a man of counsel, and has proven himself brave, prudent, and bold. He shall be called Irij, with the goal of attaining power, for he first showed gentleness, but his bravery emerged in times of danger.
After Feridoun spoke these words, he called for the book that contained the knowledge of the stars and searched for his son's planets. He discovered that Jupiter ruled in the sign of the archer in Silim's house, and the sun in the sign of the lion in Tur's house. However, in Irij's house, the moon ruled in the sign of the scorpion. Upon seeing this, he felt sorrowful, as he knew that grief and misfortune awaited Irij. After reading the secrets of fate, Fereydoun divided the world into 3 parts and gave each part to his sons as their dominion. He gave Silim the lands of Raum and Kover, which lie in the west. Tur received Turan and Turkestan, and became the ruler of the Turks and China. As for Irij, he was given Iran, along with the throne of power and the crown of supremacy. For many years, the sons of Fereydoun had sat upon their golden thrones in happiness and peace. However, evil was lurking in the depths of fate. Fereydoun had grown old, and his strength was fading, inching closer to the grave. As his life dwindled, the wicked passions of his sons grew stronger. Silim's heart underwent a transformation, and his desires turned towards malevolence. His soul became consumed by greed. He contemplated the division of the lands and rebelled against it in his thoughts, as the youngest son held the crown of supremacy. Then he instructed a messenger to mount him on a swift dromedary and deliver this message to Tur, the king of Turan.
O King of Turan, your brother sends you greetings and wishes you a long life. I ask you, with your might and wisdom, should we be content with this situation? The throne of Iran rightfully belongs to us, not to Irij. But now our brother has been placed above us. Shouldn't we strive against our father's injustice?
When Tur heard these words, he became filled with anger and spoke to the messenger, saying,
"Tell your master, my courageous brother, that our father deceived us when we were young and innocent. He has planted a tree that will bear fruit of blood and leaves that are poison. Let us meet and discuss how we can escape this evil fate."
Upon hearing this, Silim left Raum and Tur also left China. They met to discuss their course of action. They then sent a messenger to the glorious Fereydoun and said,
O aged and great king, aren't you afraid to face your God? You have done evil and left behind injustice. You have ruled with inequity and treated your eldest son unfairly. We, your sons, beg you to listen to our plea before it's too late. Command Irij to step down from the throne of Iran and hide him away, so that he becomes weak and forgotten like us. But if you do not obey our command, we will bring riders from Turkestan and Kover, filled with vengeance, and we will completely destroy Irij and the land of Iran.
When Fereydoun heard these harsh words, he became angry and immediately responded,
Speak to these senseless and impure men, these sons of our Yemen, with perverse hearts. Tell them that Feridoun is glad that they have revealed their true selves to him. Now he knows what kind of men they are. He tells them that he has divided his realm with fairness. He sought the advice of many counselors, who pondered day and night and gave each their due according to their judgment. He now speaks a word to them that they should keep in their hearts, as you sow, so shall you reap. There is another eternal home for us. This is the advice of an old man, that anyone who betrays their brother for greed is not worthy of noble lineage. So pray to God that he turns your hearts away from evil.
After hearing these words, the messenger departed. Fereydoun then called Irij before him and warned him about the deceit of his brothers. He instructed him to prepare an army and go out to meet them. However, Irij, upon hearing of his brother's evil intentions, was moved and said,
"No, my father. Allow me to go alone and speak to my brothers. I will try to calm their anger and remind them not to put their trust in worldly glory. I will recall to them the story of Jamshid and how his end was tragic because of his arrogance."
Fereydoun replied,
"Go, my son, if that is your desire. Your brothers desire war, but you seek peace. However, I ask you to take worthy knights with you and return to me quickly, for my happiness depends on your well-being."
He gave Irij a letter sealed with his royal seal, instructing him to deliver it to the kings of Raum and China. In the letter, Fereydoun expressed his old age and his desire for unity among his sons. He commended his youngest son, who had descended from the throne, and approached them with a peaceful heart. Now, when Irij arrived at the location where his brothers were camped, the army saw him and was amazed by his beauty and regal appearance. They whispered among themselves,
"Certainly he alone is deserving of the throne."
However, upon hearing these murmurs, Silim and Tur became even angrier. They withdrew into their tents and spent the entire night plotting how they could harm their brother. Now, when the curtain that hid the sun was lifted, the brethren went forth to the tents of Irij. And Irij would have greeted them, but they did not allow him. Instead, they immediately began to question him and heap reproaches upon him. Tur said,
"Why have you elevated yourself above us? Is it appropriate for your elders to bow down before you?"
When Irij heard their words, he answered,
"O kings greedy for power, I tell you, if you desire happiness, strive for peace. I do not desire the royal crown or the armies of Iran. Power that ends in discord is an honor that leads to tears. And I will step down from the throne of Iran if it will foster peace between us. For I do not crave the possession of the world if it causes you pain. For I am humble of heart, and my faith tells me to be kind."
Now Tur heard these words, but they did not soften his spirit, for he only knew evil and did not realize that Irij spoke the truth. He picked up the chair he was sitting on and threw it at his brother in anger. Then Irij pleaded for mercy, saying,
"O king, do you have no fear of God, no pity for your father? I beg you not to destroy me, lest God seek vengeance for my blood. Let it not be said that you, who have life, take that gift from others. Do not commit this evil. Do not even crush the tiny ant that carries a grain of corn, for it has life, and a sweet life is a blessing. I will disappear from your sight. I will live in solitude and secrecy, if you grant me the chance to still behold the sun."
But these words only angered Tur more, and he drew a poison and sharp dagger from his boot and thrust it into Irij's chest, the kingly cedar. And the young lord of the world grew pale and died. Then Tur severed the head from the body and filled it with musk and ambergris, and sent it to his old father, who had left the world, saying, "Look at the head of your beloved. Now give him the crown and the throne." And after committing this wicked act, the brothers packed up their tents and returned to the lands of Raum and Cathay. Now Feridoun kept his eyes fixed on the road where Irij had gone, and his heart longed for him. And when he heard that it was time for his return, he ordered a group to go and meet him, and he himself followed behind. As they had only gone a short distance, they saw a large cloud of dust in the sky. The cloud approached, and from it emerged a dromedary carrying a knight dressed in mourning attire. And he carried in his arms a golden casket, and inside the casket were luxurious silk fabrics, and within the fabrics was wrapped the head of Irij. When Feridoun saw the face of the messenger, his heart was filled with fear, but when he saw the head of his son, he fell from his horse in sorrow. A cry of mourning filled the air, and the army shouted in grief. The flags were torn, the drums were broken, and the elephants and cymbals were adorned with mourning colors, all because Irij had departed from the world. Feridoun returned to the city on foot, accompanied by all the nobles, retracing their steps in the dusty path. When they arrived at Irij's garden, Feridoun faltered in his sorrow. He pressed the head of his young son against his chest. He cast black earth upon his throne, tore his hair, shed tears, and his cries reached the heavens. In his grief he spoke and said,
"O Master of the world, who metes out justice, please look down upon this innocent one whom his brothers have cruelly murdered. Sear their hearts so that joy cannot enter, and grant my prayer. Allow me to live until a hero, a mighty warrior for vengeance, is born from the seed of Irij. Then, when I have seen his face, I will depart as is fitting, and the earth shall cover my body."
Thus Feridoun wept bitterly, refusing comfort day and night, never leaving his son's garden. The earth became his bed, and the dust his pillow, as he watered the ground with his tears. He remained in this spot until the grass grew above his chest, and his eyes were blinded from weeping. Yet his tongue did not cease from lamenting, and his heart continued to grieve. He cried out continuously,
"O Irij, O my son, no prince has ever died such a death as yours. Your head was severed by Ahriman, your body torn by lions."
Thus Feridoun mourned, and the sound of lamentation spread. Then, after many years had gone by, Feridoun remembered the daughter of Irij and how people said she was beautiful. He searched for her in the women's quarters, and upon discovering that she was indeed beautiful, he decided to find a husband for her. He married her off to Pesheng, who was a heroic descendant of Jamshid. A son fair and strong, worthy of the throne, was born to them. When he was still a tender babe, they brought him to Feridoun and cried,
"O Lord of earth, let thy soul rejoice, behold this Irij."
Feridoun's lips were wreathed with smiles, and he took up the infant in his arms and cried unto God, saying,
"O God, grant that my sight be restored unto me, that I may behold the face of this babe."
As he prayed, his eyes were opened, and his sight rested upon his son. Feridoun gave thanks unto God and called down blessings upon the child. He prayed that the day might be blessed also and the heart of his enemies be torn with anguish. He named him Minuchihr, saying,
"A branch worthy of a noble stock hath borne fruit."
The child was raised in Feridoun's house, and he was protected from all harm. Though the years passed, the stars brought him no evil. When he reached a ripe age, Fereydoun gave Minuchihr a throne of gold, a mace, a crown of jewels, and the key to all his treasures. He commanded his nobles to show reverence and salute him as king. Khan, the son of Kove, served, King of Yemen, Shah the victorious, and many other mighty princes gathered around the throne. However, the young Shah outshone them in strength and beauty, and joy was once more in the land. But news of the grandeur that surrounded Fereydoun reached even the lands of Raum and China, causing the kings there to feel troubled and disheartened. They then discussed how they could regain the favor of the Shah, as they feared Minuchihr when he would come of age. So they sent a messenger to Fereydoun with valuable gifts, instructing him to speak to their father and say,
"O Shah, may you live forever. I bring a message from your humblest slaves, who are filled with remorse and have not dared to come into your presence. They pray for your forgiveness for their wrongdoing, as their hearts are pure and they only acted according to what was destined for them. What is written in the stars shall surely come to pass. Therefore, O king, their eyes are filled with tears and they beseech you to listen to them. As a sign of your grace, send Minuchihr, your son, to them, for their hearts long to see his face and pay him homage."
Upon hearing his son's words, Fereydoun became angry and furrowed his brow, for he knew they were only trying to deceive him. He said to the messenger,
"Go and tell your masters that their deceitful words will not avail them. Ask them if they are not ashamed to speak falsehoods with tongues of wickedness. I have heard their message, now hear the answer I send. You say you desire the love of Minuchihr, but I ask you, what did you do for Irij? And now that you are rid of him, you seek the blood of his son. I tell you, you shall never see his face unless he leads a mighty army. Then the tree that grew from the seeds of vengeance shall be watered with blood, for vengeance has slumbered until this day, as it was not fitting for me to raise my hand against my sons in battle. But now a branch has sprung forth from the tree that the enemy uprooted, and he shall come as a fierce lion, carrying the vengeance of his father. And I tell you, take back the treasures you have sent me, for do you think I would abandon my vengeance for mere trinkets? Will I erase the blood you have spilled or sell the life of my offspring for gold? And tell them again that as long as Irij's father lives, he will not abandon his purpose. Now that you have heard my message, keep it in your heart and depart swiftly."
After hearing these words, the messenger quickly left. When he arrived in Silim and Tur, he relayed the message to them, describing how he had seen Minuchihr sitting on a golden throne, strong like Tomoreth who had bound the Deves. He spoke of the renowned heroes surrounding him, such as Kove the smith, Karan his son, served the King of Yemen, and Saum, the son of Neriman, undefeated in battle. He also mentioned Shah the victorious, the treasurer. The messenger then described the vast treasures in Fereydoun's house and the formidable army that the men of Raum and China could not withstand. He revealed that their hearts were filled with hatred towards the kings because of Irij. The kings were filled with fear when they heard this and their father's message. Tur said to Silim,
"From now on, we must give up pleasure, for it is necessary for us to hurry and not wait until this young lion's teeth are sharpened and he becomes tall and strong."
They then prepared their armies, and the number of their men was too numerous to count. Helmets were connected to helmets, and spears to spears, and countless jewels, baggage, and elephants accompanied them, creating a bewildering sight. It appeared as if an incomprehensible army was marching. They advanced from Turan into Iran, with the two kings leading them, their hearts filled with hatred. However, the fortunes of these wicked individuals were declining. Upon learning that an army had crossed the Jihan, Fereydoun summoned his son Minuchihr and instructed him to take command of the warriors. The Shah's army was impressive, vast, and powerful, covering the land like a swarm of locusts. And they marched from Temish to the desert, and Minuchihr commanded them with great strength. And on his right rode Karan the Avenger, and on his left Saum, the son of Neriman, and above their heads waved the flag of Kove, and their armor glistened in the sun. Like a lion breaking forth from the jungle to seize its prey, this army rushed forth to avenge the death of Irij. And the head of Minuchihr rose above the rest, shining like the moon or the sun above the mountains. And he exhorted them with fiery words to not rest or grow weary until they had broken the power of these sons of Ahriman. Now, when Tur and Silim saw that the Iranians had come out against them, they organized their army. As the day broke and night gave way, the two armies clashed in battle, and the fight raged fiercely until sunset. The ground was soaked in blood, and the elephants' feet resembled pillars of coral. As the sun set, Tur and Silim devised a plan to deceitfully capture Minuchihr, as they recognized his strength and unwavering courage. Tur led a small group to surprise him in his tents. However, Minuchihr was aware of their malicious intentions and swiftly attacked Tur. Despite Tur's attempt to escape, Minuchihr pursued him and thrust a lance into his back. After killing him, Minuchihr severed Tur's head from his body, leaving the body for the wild beasts, while sending the head to Fereydoun. And he wrote a letter to him and sent him greetings, informing him about everything that had happened and advising him not to rest or delay until Irij's death was avenged. Now, when Silim heard about his brother's fate, he became very afraid and looked for someone to help him. Kakui, who was from the lineage of Zohak, came to him. However, Minuchihr fought with Kakui for a long time and defeated him, even though the Div was strong and skilled in battle. Silim became even more hopeless and tried to hide near the sea. But Minuchihr blocked his way and caught up to him. With his own hand, Minuchihr killed Silim, cutting off his head from his body. Then, he raised Silim's head on his lance. And when the army of Silim saw this, they fled into the hills and vanished like cattle whom the snow has driven from their pasture. Then they took counsel and chose a man from among their midst, one who was prudent and gentle of speech. And they bade him go before the Shah and say,
"Have mercy upon us, O Shah, for neither hate nor vengeance drove us forth against thee, but only this, that we obeyed the wills of our lords. But we ourselves are peaceful men, tillers of the earth and keepers of cattle, and we pray thee that thou let us return in safety whence we are come. And we acknowledge thee our Shah, and we pray thee make thy servants acquainted with thy desires."
When Minuchihr had heard these words, he spoke and said,
"My desire is not after these men, neither is my longing after blood, but mercy. Let every man lay down his arms and go his ways, and let peace be in the land, and joy wait upon your feet."
When the men heard this, they praised the Shah and called down blessings upon his head. And they approached him, each man carrying his armor and weapons of war. They placed them at his feet, and a mighty mountain of weapons was formed, with the blue steel shining in the sunlight. Then Minuchihr graciously dismissed them. After the army dispersed, he sent a messenger to Fereydoun, carrying the head of Silim and a written message. Once he had made all the necessary arrangements, he led his warriors to the city of Fereydoun. His grandfather came out to meet him, accompanied by many elephants adorned in gold, and warriors dressed in luxurious attire, as well as a large crowd wearing brightly colored garments. Flags waved above them, trumpets blared, cymbals clashed, and sounds of celebration filled the air. When Minuchihr saw his grandfather approaching, he dismounted from his horse, ran to meet him, and fell at his feet, seeking his blessing. Feridoun blessed Minuchihr and lifted him from the ground. He then instructed him to mount his horse again and took his hand as they triumphantly entered the city. Upon reaching the king's residence, Fereydoun seated Minuchihr on a golden throne. He called Saum, the son of Neriman, and said,
I ask you to raise and nurture this young man for the kingdom, and support him with your strength and wisdom.
He placed Minuchir's hand in Saum's and said,
Thanks be to God the Merciful, who has heard my prayers and granted the wishes of his servant. For now, I shall depart and no longer burden the world.
After giving gifts to his servants, Fereydoun retreated into solitude, constantly gazing at the heads of his sons and mourning the misfortune they had brought upon him. Each day, he grew weaker, until finally, his life's light extinguished, and Fereydoun disappeared from the earth, leaving his name behind. Minuchihr mourned for his grandfather with tears and lamentation, and erected a grand tomb in his honor. However, after the 7 days of mourning, he placed the crown of the Chionides on his head and fastened a powerful red sash around his waist. The people called him Shah, and he was beloved throughout the land.